Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. You've got Mr. Kerry Baker and me, Ursula Mecabe. Kerry, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Who goes first? I'll go first.
Okay.
Jacob Samuels, 4750. My husband has over 250% rating for his lower extremities. Should that give him in the SMC world? I'm sorry, there's something covering up the word there. 100%, which will give him another L. And 2L give him SMCO, and with SMC and with his SMCK give him R1. He has SMCL and a half. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing some of that. So, all right, go back to the first part. So that you can't count 250% and say that should give him in the SMC world. It depends. Does he have loss of use of the legs? And if he does, then that alone is SMCL. Now it sounds like he's already SMCL or L and a half, actually. So my guess on what you're telling me there is that he might be at aid and attendance, maybe. Go back to the second part. I'm trying to remember if you said that. And, yeah, I'm not sure. But if he's at aid and attendance, and then he gets SMCL for loss of use of the two legs, as long as they're not for the same thing, as long as there's no overlap there, then right, 2 L's would put him at SMCO, which would give him R1. The K wouldn't matter at that point if he was at SMCO and needed R1. So if I'm understanding that right, I'm taking some liberties with some stuff I don't know. Ursula, am I missing something, you think?
No, I think it depends on what that L is for, if it's for loss of use or if it's for aid and attendance. If you can get aid and attendance on two different things, like, aid and attendance because of, the back condition and the lower extremities, but in addition to that, you would need aid and attendance for another disability, that would get you the 2 L's. I mean, there's not enough here for me to be able to see how you're only at L and a half. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't really tell from that. But you're on the right track as far as getting L's to O's and trying to make sure that you're rated correctly for the aid and attendance with half steps or full steps to get you as high as you can. So, it depends on what that rating sheet looks like, but you have the right thought process on it. It's just a matter of getting those ratings in. All right, next question. This is from Find Your Focus. Tinnitus, hearing loss, and urinary incontinence, etc. Can I be service connected under the same relaxed guidelines for TBI, since the TBI and PTSD occurred during the same MST incident? Under the same relaxed guidelines for TBI. So if you're service connected for the PTSD and the TBI due to the MST, VA needs to rate you for the secondary conditions based on the TBI. So if the tinnitus, the hearing loss, and the urinary incontinence are part of that TBI, they do need to rate those separately. I'm not sure what relaxed guidelines you're talking about for TBI. I don't know that there are relaxed guidelines. They're complicated guidelines on how to rate for a TBI. But ultimately, if you're service connected for the TBI and PTSD and you have physical manifestations of that TBI, such as the tinnitus and the hearing loss and urinary incontinence, VA should service connect you for those conditions as well.
They might be referring to the SMCT guidelines and getting it
Um,
confused with relaxed guidelines for TBI. That's not really a relaxed guideline to get service connected for TBI. And I don't know that I'd call it relaxed guidelines, period, but it might be what they're referring to.
Yeah. Okay. So if they're talking about the SMCT without the need for the higher level of care, I mean, if you need the aid and attendance of another because of your TBI, and they can't differentiate the PTSD from the TBI, I mean, you can certainly try that. So yeah, I mean, it's all part of it. All right, next, Kerry.
You can tell I'm getting older. I had to put glasses on this time to see the screen. I usually don't. It's right at that level. So anyway, another step 25, one of two. I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer. I was at Camp Lejeune during the time period for the current group claims. Because my diagnosis is recent, I could not participate. Can I file my own VA claim as presumptive since I was there? I'm not sure what you mean when you say you cannot participate or you could not participate unless you're referring to the lawsuits being filed in federal court. And if that's the case, then I understand that. But yes, you can always file your own claim with VA. The deal that the well, not so recent now law did with allowing people to file federal lawsuits or lawsuits in federal court, that's different than filing a claim with VA. So yes, you can certainly file a claim with VA. And you say yes to lawsuits. Yeah. So yeah, I'd file the claim with VA. In fact, there's a clause in there that said if you filed the lawsuit, they might, and you had a VA claim, they might deduct one from the other. Some people say they don't do that. I read it as they can. We don't really know, but yeah, it might be half a dozen, 1/6 of the other. So most definitely file the claim.
All right, Laura Wang, 9289, rated 90%. Unfortunately, my window closed for higher level review, but I also need to file claims for new presumptive conditions. Do I file a new claim with both conditions, or do they need to be filed separately and through different processes? Thank you so much. So can you go back to the first part, please? So it depends on what that higher level review was for. So if you were going to file a higher level review for an increased rating, then you could file the increased rating for whatever was on that higher level review, as well as your new claims. I mean, I'm assuming it would be for an increased rating if you're trying to appeal it and it's closed out. So you can use a 526 for all of those. So a 526 can be used for an increased rating of a condition. It's also used to file for new claims that you've never filed before. If you have filed for conditions previously, but they were denied, and now they're presumptives and you want to file a new claim for those, you'd want to use an 0995 because they were previously claimed. And then you'd still want to do the 526 for the increased rating of whatever condition it is that you lost your higher level review for. So it just depends on whether you've never ever claimed those conditions before, or if they're brand new, you're going to want to go 526. Kerry?
Nope. I agree with everything you said there. Got nothing else. Trish Wade, 22, got proposed reduction MS. I'm assuming that's multiple sclerosis from 30% to 0 for some improvement. Yes. the rating decision attached only mentions CUE to sever 10% anterior nerve. Again, I've had MS for 22 years. VA added anterior nerve from EMG test. Thoughts? Yes, I've got some thoughts on that. So the minimum, now, obviously there's some stuff we don't know here. But the minimum rating for MS is 30%. So if they're trying to take a minimum rating of 30% down to 0%, they cannot do that. Just no way in hell. And as far as now, it looks like they may have awarded service connection for an anterior nerve, I'm guessing, as a residual of the MS, which is more than plausible. And it was from an EMG test, and now they think that that was an error. I would disagree with that. You could be rated for all kinds of nerves in relation to MS. So yeah, I think what you're looking at here is somebody taking their brain and throwing it into the garbage can, and maybe having a little bit of trouble spelling VA. Yeah, don't let them do this to you. This is that's
Request a hearing.
Yeah. Excuse my French, but that's a BS rating. And yeah, I would ask for a hearing, and stupid. Don't get me on my soapbox.
Yep. Moving on. Don't let them do it though. All right, Escobar 25. Good afternoon. Thank you all for y'all do for the veterans. You're welcome. All right, so how many veterans get awarded aid and attendance for 100% PTSD in your experience? I'm applying for aid and attendance with 100% single rate PTSD, meet the requirements, but I also have 50% migraines and sleep apnea. Would that consider toward my ANA? And would I get CMP exam for my current disability to be reevaluated? So the quick answer is yes to all of these things. You can get aid and attendance based solely on your mental health condition. That's something you can do. They're typically not looking at things like whether you can bathe and feed yourself. You're looking at more for medication management, keeping yourself safe. If you're 100%, you're having some issues when it comes to probably, memory, taking your medications. So it would kind of be based on all of that, but also keep in mind, being 100% for PTSD and being able to, or any mental health condition, and being able to make very specific arguments is kind of contradicting the fact that you need aid and attendance for it. So be careful with that. You will be reevaluated for the PTSD. 100%, they will reevaluate you because they're going to need to make sure that you're still at 100% and whether or not you need aid and attendance of another person because of that PTSD. You can try to get the aid and attendance just on the PTSD or, whatever condition you're 100% for. If it's going to set you up for other kinds of benefits with SMC, but normally if you're 50% for migraines and 50% for I don't remember and sleep apnea, that would get you to M, right? Yeah, to M. So you would want to try because you got the L for the PTSD, then 50% for migraines and 50% for sleep apnea. L and a half M. Kerry, yeah. You could, yes, I'm right?
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, no, I agree with all that, but this is one of those areas where I say tread with caution. 100% rating for mental health is not easy to get by itself, and the ones that get ANA for that are most definitely the more severe cases. And and I would go further than what Ursula said. It's medication management, which a lot of people need, in my opinion, all right, just mine, is not going to do it. All right. You really need to be in need of someone to keep you safe in your environment. I agree. It doesn't have anything to do with getting dressed or feeding yourself or anything like that. There's that component for aid and attendance, and the other component is basically keeping yourself safe in your environment. Not being a danger to yourself and others. So think about that, and you will get reevaluated. So think about that, and just tread with caution. That's all. And you'll know if you meet that criteria. You'll, I think, at the end of the day, you'll know. But you're right. If you get it, like Ursula said, you got a shot to certainly L.5 with the migraines and with the sleep apnea, another half step to M. So. New guy, SY2, S2Y, sorry, a little dyslexia. 100% for Parkinson. Recent new mental health CMP showed total work and social impairment. Does this qualify me for SMC? If so, at what level? Well, I can't say at what level based on that. And I can't say that it would qualify you for SMC. What it sounds like is it would qualify you for a 100% rating for your mental health. Now, so I guess, yes, that would qualify for you for SMC because you'd have 200s, one for the Parkinson's, one for the mental health. At a minimum, that would give you SMCS at the housebound rate. So that would bump you at least one level up into the SMC world. The bigger question is, do you need aid and attendance? 100% Parkinson's means it's already a severe case of Parkinson's. The mental health, is that a Parkinson's dementia, like Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's related mental health decline? Is it PTSD? Is it a combination of the two? All of that could obviously play into the need for aid and attendance, but maybe even without the mental health, maybe your Parkinson's is severe enough to require the need for A&A. It certainly could be at 100%. So best case scenario, if you got A&A based on the Parkinson's alone, the mental health at 100% would bump you up the NM rate. I'd say worst case scenario, you get aid and attendance for everything, and you'd have an SMCL rate. So, Ursula?
Nothing to add. All right, the Veterans Aid. Good afternoon. VA PCP performed an A&A exam and completed VA Form 212680 due to service-connected orthopedic conditions causing the need for aid and attendance for bathing, dressing, grooming, attending to hygiene needs. Rating decision has, you require aid and attendance. Your VA Form 212680 received documents your need for aid and attendance as a favorable finding, yet they denied the claim. Make it make sense. I cannot make it make sense, but what I can do is try to make sense of it. And the only thing I can come up with is that you need to appeal that higher level review. We see this so often where we're filing aid and attendance forms or asking for aid and attendance, and the favorable findings, they'll even say you need aid and attendance due to your service-connected conditions and then deny the claim. I don't know why they do it. Kerry, do you know why they do it? I don't know why they do it.
I do.
Okay, let's talk about it. But I can't appeal it. 100% take a higher level review. That's what you need to do. There's nothing much you can do there except appeal it. But this is a trend, and this is something we certainly see. But now Kerry's going to tell us why it's a trend.
All right. Go back to that first part. I want to make sure I'm answering the right question here. All right, orthopedic conditions. Okay. All right. So they do that because 99% of the cases that you see this on, where a veteran has service-connected conditions that require the need for A&A, VA comes out in a rating decision and says, hey, you need A&A due to your service-connected conditions, when that's a binding finding from VA, yet they deny in the same decision. Stupid. Why do they do that? Well, they have a manual provision in their M21 that says, and I'm not quoting here, but I'm close. Generally, a single 100% rating is required for aid and attendance. And then it goes on to explain some other things. But that's the sentence that they focus in on with the looking through a funnel. And they don't see anything else. And they think, oh, well, my boss in my manual is telling me that I can't grant aid and attendance unless somebody has a single rating of 100%. And that is absolutely false. Okay. They should have never written that in the manual. And that is because neither the regulation nor the statute require a single 100% rating in order to get aid and attendance. Somebody in their magnificent magnifying mind decided to make the analogy to a housebound rating. In a housebound rating, you require a single 100% rating. And in their mind, aid and attendance being a higher rating than housebound, they thought, well, if you need a single 100% for housebound, why wouldn't you need a single 100% for A&A, since it's an even higher benefit? What they're forgetting when they did that is that if you have 100 plus 60, you get housebound, period, as a statutory rate, meaning you're not getting the housebound based on a need. Okay, you don't need to require aid and attendance. You are not bound to your home. If you have 100 plus 60, you get SMCS, period. Aid and attendance is based on need. There are no, maybe one or two, but basically no service-connected ratings at 100% for musculoskeletal conditions, short of like certain types of spine disorders or whatever. But you can most definitely need aid and attendance based on severe musculoskeletal disabilities. But you can't get to 100% because there's no 100% rating for most of them. And so they look at that and go, oh, we can't give you aid and attendance because you don't have a single 100% rating. And it's just backwards ass thinking by people in central office that wrote part of this manual. And you appeal this to the board. You cite 3.104C, which is a regulation that says VA is bound by favorable findings, and that includes the Board of Veterans Appeals. And the board will almost always go, well, you made a finding that this vet needs aid and attendance due to his service-connected conditions. We're bound by that. Therefore, aid and attendance is granted. So that's what you want to do. Appeal it to the board. Usually the direct review lane will do. It's not a complicated argument. And that's why they do that. Stupid. There, I'm off my soapbox.
You get the next one's yours too.
Oh, okay.
Got to keep going.
See what happens when Ursula puts me on my soapbox. She does it. All right, DB. I'm just going to call you DB. They denied all my claims because they said they could not find my medical records. What do I do? I'm assuming you're talking about your service medical records, because medical records could be a lot of things. I mean, that's a hard question, because why, if assuming they're talking about your service medical records, Well, why couldn't they find them? All right. And obviously, we don't know the answer to that. What year did you get out? Were they in the fire? Did the service department send them to the records processing center? Do you have a copy? What did they do to try to get a copy of the service records? Maybe you need to get a copy of your claims file. Are they actually in the claims file and they just didn't look? There could be a number of things there. You might want to do Form SF-180 and request a copy of your service records directly from the people that hold it. You use a SF-180 for that. In case you might get a copy where they couldn't. We've seen that happen. And another important thing is,
Okay, I can do that.
are the things you're filing for something that would be in your service records? Okay. Usually that's if you got hurt in the service, you hurt your back and you got treatment for your back and you're trying to show that, then yeah, your service records are important. If you were exposed to herbicides, that's not going to be in your service records, at least 99% of the time. So are your service records dispositive of the issue? They might be, they might not be. But if they're not, then they shouldn't be denying the issue simply because they couldn't get the service records. So there's a whole lot that could be going on there. Ursula, what do you have?
I think you're definitely right when you're talking about service records, but if you're talking about just medical records, there's a couple of things you can do. You can either get those medical records and submit them yourself, go to your providers if they're not at the VA, and submit those records as new and relevant evidence. If you can't find them or they're VA records, maybe let them know where you've been treated and send in a VA form 4142. That's a release for them to be able to go out and get medical records for you. So there's a couple of ways to do it. Like Kerry said, the SF-180 for service records, or submit those records yourself, or get in a 4142 and a 4142A. I think you need both of them to go in. All right, next question. Kim. Convoluted claim, but walk with me. Okay. Walk in with you. Intent to file 8/9/2023. Original rating decision December 2024. Claimed bilateral hallux rigidus, but also claimed bilateral foot arthritis. HR denied December 2024. Arthritis not addressed. July 2025, granted 10% for the HR with den arthritis, foot arthritis not addressed. I'm going to file a higher level review for not addressing the entire foot arthritis. Okay, I don't see the question in there, but what I will say is we've got some handy dandy fancy new case law that just came out about VA having to address all of the claims that you put in specifically. The only thing is that I'm wondering about in this situation is you were granted 10% with arthritis. If those are in your feet and then it seems like they may have already kind of rated it all together. So they may have addressed it in this situation. I'm not looking at the rating criteria right now for the feet to see if that arthritis should or should not be rated separately from it. But anytime you claim something, let's say you claim for memory loss and something else, and VA decides something else, but never decides that memory loss, they have to now. They have to address that claim. It's no longer allowed to be implicitly denied, or, well, we looked at it, but since we denied this, we obviously have to deny that. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So in your case, I would certainly do what you're planning on doing, is filing the higher level review for not addressing the foot arthritis, but they also may have, you'd have to read the rating code and what number they've assigned to it and see if the arthritis is in there and if those symptoms are accounted for in that rating. Kerry?
I agree. Yeah, from what you're saying here, I don't think they've forgotten the arthritis. I think they granted service connection for your overall foot disability. And not to say you should not ask for an HLR, you certainly could, and maybe you should, because the question, at least off the top of my head, is, have they service connected your overall foot disability under one code when they should have done it under two? Or you have two disabilities there that are properly rated under one code, and that could be the case, that should have been rated higher because you've got multiple things going on. But yeah, you've got a lot of things that your feet can be rated as, and some things are rated per each foot independently. Other things are rated with both feet together. And so you really have to get down into the code and figure out what you have. Should it be rated, or is there multiple ways to rate what you have? Should it be rated under a foot diagnostic code or a general arthritis diagnostic code? So, but trying to say that, well, VA didn't rate my arthritis or service connect my arthritis, I'd say you're close, but you're probably off just a little bit there. So yeah, you need to get down into the codes and look at all that, and that can be daunting if you're new at this. So, and the DRO should be able to help you on that. If you have a HLR conference, sometimes the DROs can be a big help just in explaining some of that. I think that's all I got.
All right, what case law am I referring to? I'm going to go, I don't want to tell you the wrong name of the case, so I'm going to go find it while Kerry looks at it. I think it's Hamill versus Collins. That's right? It was Hamill?
I'm not sure.
Let me double check, and I will have Benji and Nate put it into the comments for you guys so you can go and read it. So I'll get that for you, okay? I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. So I'm going to be here. I'm just going to be looking on other screens. Okay.
Bye, Ursula.
Bye.
Oh, no, you're still going to be here. All right.
I'm probably still here, but I'm doing other stuff.
Okay. Well, we can still see you.
Okay.
Happiness 4703 for caregiver. ANA, can regional boss write, who regional bosses? Can regional boss write a 21-10210 stating the sheltered workplace in knowing disabilities, stating they are permitted to leave whenever needed and the last date for PTSD episode, that they did so. Should the veteran follow up with personal statement stating they are miserable and in pain, but they have to continue work until properly rated to survive? All right, go back to that first part. I'm having a little trouble following this. For caregiver ANA, okay, those are two different things. For caregiver and ANA, they're not the same thing. Can regional boss, I'm guessing you meaning your employer, so can your boss fill out a form Okay, so I'm taking some liberties here. Stating the sheltered workplace, and in other words, stating that your job is a sheltered workplace, and that they know your disabilities, stating they are permitted to leave whenever you need to leave. Okay, so it's making a little more sense now. So in other words, can your boss make a statement that your job is shelter and you can leave whenever you want, and that you can't leave yet because you can't survive if you don't, if you do leave now and you're not rated higher. So for all of that, yes, your boss can absolutely do that. And that can absolutely help with the rating. Now for caregiver and A&A, you're talking a completely, that's one, like I said, those are two different benefits. If you're talking, can your boss write that for A&A? So in other words, you're working and you want your boss to write something that would support A&A, which would mean maybe you're already 100%. I don't know. You might be getting in some loose territory there. If you're so disabled that you need A&A, that just doesn't mix with being in a work environment. Okay, in my opinion. But I have a feeling that's not what you're asking. So I'm not sure how the caregiver and the A&A play into your question. I'm a little confused there. Ursula was looking something else up, so she might not be able to help me on this one, but
I think I can a little bit. Let's go back to the other one real quick. So, I mean, I think what you're asking about for the sheltered workplace really is more a question on trying to get TDIU, right? If you're working and you want to get TDIU, you may need something in that. If you need A&A or a caregiver benefit and you are still working, I don't think that actually matters. If you need help from someone in the mornings to put braces on your legs, to do things to help maneuver you into a wheelchair so that you can get out and get on with your day, which includes working, and then you're allowed to leave whenever you want, I don't see where there's an issue with that, in all honesty. People who are, severely disabled in wheelchairs work all the time, and they do need aid and attendance, and they are still working. So don't conflate sheltered work and TDIU with aid and attendance and caregiver. The question is whether or not you need the help at home from someone else in order to take care of the activities of daily living or to keep yourself safe in your environment. So as long as you meet those, I don't know what a sheltered employment statement really is going to do for aid and attendance and caregiver. It can't hurt, but you really are going to have to focus in on the reasons why you need that care from someone else. And that would be my 2 cents.
excellent answer. That's why there's two of us.
All right, next. All right, Angel Marrero. Greetings, folks. Hi, sir. Can a BVA direct grant service connection and include Barry v. McDonough then to infer SMCR1 if the ratings all meet the criteria? Thank you. So short answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Because the issue in front of the board is probably the service connection, not the rating. What they will do is if you get granted for whatever condition it is, they will just grant that benefit. If they grant, hey, I'm granting service connection for this knee condition, they're going to grant it. It will go back down to the regional office. The regional office will implement it, and that is where they're supposed to infer all of the SMCs and make sure that your rating is correct. Whether or not they do that, we don't know. It's a 50-50. They might not. I've been surprised at some of the great things the RO has done in inferring high SMCs, but there's also a chance that they don't. If they don't infer it and they don't give you the SMC that you're entitled to, You would have to go back to the board for your rating and the correct SMC. So what you're not going to see is, hey, board, I need service connection for my knee, and them go, great, we're going to service connect your knee. Oh, and while we're at it, we're going to add on all of these things. The regional office has to mess it up before the board can take ownership of it and make a decision on it. So no, they cannot.
The only thing I want to add to that is, regardless of what the issue is, don't ever rely or expect the board to infer just about anything. Can they? Yeah, in some circumstances, but they're an appellate body. They are usually limited in jurisdiction to the issue that's before them. So if you think there's should be something that should be inferred from the appeal that's before them, you want to raise that specifically to them. But yeah, don't expect them to infer things that are not before them. All right. Lou, M9M, can you please explain the different criteria of the caregiver and disability MCL? If the vet has TDIU and needs caregiving, but the disability causing the caregiving need is not service connected.
I'm going to take this one, sir.
Go for it. See, Ursula
I'm gonna
is
do it.
Ursula's my caregiver expert here.
I'll
I'm
take
so
this one.
glad for that.
So the criteria is actually pretty similar, but just a little bit different. So when you're dealing with SMCL or aid and attendance, you are saying that you need the regular aid and attendance of someone due to your service-connected disabilities, right? It's very specific on what you need that aid and attendance for. It has to be service-connected, and it's, you need that regular aid and attendance. On the other hand, the caregiver program does not require you to be service connected for all of the conditions or the condition that requires you to need caregiving assistance. But they do have some different rules that they go by. So you have to be at least 70% service connected. So you could be, for example, 70% service connected for PTSD, but you may need caregiving assistance because of Parkinson's that is not service connected. So as long as you meet that 70% threshold, it doesn't matter what conditions are causing you to need the caregiver benefit, which is very different from aid and attendance. The other thing that's very different about SMCL or aid and attendance and the caregiver benefit is that with the caregiver benefit, depending on how much help you need, determines how much money that caregiver is going to get. So if you need help with 1 to 3 ADLs, activities of daily living, you're going to get a level 1 stipend. I'm not going to go into how you get paid for that. There's a whole website. They're all based kind of on where you live. But with them, your need for help with that ADL must happen each and every time you do that ADL, which is different from aid and attendance. Aid and attendance is you need the regular support of someone else. The caregiver benefit says every time you put on your shoes, you need help putting on your shoes. Not, I put on my shoes last week, but this week I can't. Next week I might be able to. So the caregiver is more giving in some ways, but also much stricter in others. So they're different. They're just a little bit different. When I first saw the caregiver program, I thought it would be a much easier benefit to get than it has proven to be. I figured if you had aid and attendance, by God, you should be able to get caregiver benefits. And that's just not the case because of that part that says every single time you do that ADL. So that is the difference in those. That's it. Did I answer the question? Yeah, I did. All right, you're up. You're next.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. User, bunch of letters and numbers. If your claim is returned to the board from the, let me start over. If your claim is returned to the board from the legacy, can the board then approve what is still being denied? Yes. Yes. So in the legacy system, the board maintains jurisdiction on that appeal until one of a number of things happen. Either somebody grants the benefit, the local level or the board, or you withdraw the appeal. The appeal period expires, which if it's already been to the board and it's been remanded in the legacy system, there's nothing you need to do. It's going to go back to the board automatically. So a few things like that. And yes, if it's returned to the board for the sole purpose for them to make the final decision. So yes, their job is to make that final decision, and it can be granted. I miss legacy. Just want to throw that out there.
All right, Thomas. Update, VA hearing. VA removed the proposal to sever 0% hypertension and stated it's caused by my PTSD. That's excellent. I'm glad they did not sever it. I'm glad VA is not severing. Me too. But it should be 10% as I take continuous medication. How should I ask VA for the exception to continuous medication, higher level review or supplemental? All right, so with hypertension, most people who have hypertension are medicated. That doesn't automatically give you a 10% rating because you're taking medication. What you want to look for when it comes to your hypertension rating is your rating, your blood pressure prior to becoming medicated. That's going to actually determine what your rating for the hypertension is. So, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's got all the different on the rating code. It's like if it's over, 140 systolic, and then you're going to get rated up. So it's how bad was your hypertension before you went on medication. For the most part, people are going to be falling in the 10% and 0% range for hypertension. It's not a big one where you're going to get all these high ratings for it. So check the diagnostic code criteria, the rating criteria for the hypertension, see where your hypertension was prior to being medicated, and then argue for an increase based on that. But you're probably looking at 0. Most people come in 0, some people 10%, but it's not just about the hypertension. Like hypertension is an important one to get service connected, even if you're rated at 0, because of all of the things that it can cause down the line. It's important to get it, but don't expect a high rating from it. It's not going to be a game changer for most people.
And if you are rated like 20% or higher, we've seen a few cases like that, or if you think you should, maybe think outside the box of hypertension. All right, because when I see somebody that's 20 or 30% for high blood pressure, the first one, I'm surprised you haven't had a stroke yet, and two, do you have an enlarged heart? Because hypertensive heart disease with an enlarged heart might be worth 30%. And they might miss that if they're just looking at hypertension by itself. And if you have long-standing high blood pressure that's high, then you're going to start having other issues at that point. Kidney problems. Do you have kidney problems? So don't look at just, but yeah, 0 to 10% is about what we see 90% of the time. All right. Colette, 102. Currently pending aid and attendance application with the VA due to flare-ups for my back and migraines. currently rated 100% PNT with the following rating: 70 depression, 50 pes planus, 50 migraines, 40 lumbar, 20 right radiculopathy, 10 left radiculopathy, 10 each both knees. How would I advance up the SMC ladder? Go back to that first part. All right. So let's hypothetically say they grant you aid and attendance. My first bet is probably a pretty good bet, would be that they look at all your conditions as you got right now, and grant you aid and attendance based on all of them. And you would be at SMCL, and that's how you would have progressed up the SMC ladder. Because unless you're claiming A&A based on very specific things, generally, at least, especially the first time out of the gate, they're simply going to look at all your disabilities. You have the, what they consider their low 100% criteria met. Well, you don't. You have 70. But my guess is if they grant it, then they would grant it based on everything, which would leave no room for a half step for something. So you have to be specific if you're saying say the depression and the back pain cause it by itself. Then, because it looks like you said your flare-ups for your back and your migraines. If that's the case, if it's clear like that in your claim, and they grant it based on everything, then you can have a HLR review, say, look, I claimed it just based on this, and they considered everything. They'd have to go back and relook at it. But that's kind of it. If you do get it based on those things, then they're going to look at the other items under Barry to see if they get you up a half step or more. So I think with what you listed there, Barry would be the only way that you're going to go above the aid and attendance rate, since there's not, unless there's loss of use, something that I didn't see. But that's assuming there's no loss of use.
I think you'll get to about M if you were to do it. But all right, city nights. What is the benefit of having a diagnosis on a CMP of a new separate condition not claimed, but within the scope of the claimed diagnosis? That new diagnosis is never adjudicated until claimed 10 years later. Example, claimed flat feet, but new diagnosed malunion or non-union of tarsal or metatarsal bones, hammer toe. So you can't, if when you claimed 10 years ago, you claimed your flat feet, and inside that CMP, it did not have other conditions that are secondary, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, there is a thing called in the scope of the claim, or, whatever. 10 years later, if you go and you get flat feet, and then in that CMP, they diagnose all these other things that are part of that initial flat feet, they should service connect you or rate you for all of those new things as kind of like a progression of the disease or new secondary conditions. But based on what you're seeing here, I'm not seeing, a way to take it back those 10 years unless but it says a new diagnosed. So not entirely sure what you're asking, but if you are asking like, hey, I have flat feet and now I have these new diagnosed conditions, should they be included in the rating decision? Yes, they should. They are within the scope of the claim. So that's what I would say. Kerry?
I got nothing else.
All right, we'll take 2 more questions. Kerry, you get your next one.
Oh, we didn't do Baker's Butcher block.
We'll do that. We're gonna be introducing something where Kerry gets a moment to rant and he gets his time. We'll do it the next time Kerry and I are together. We're going to come up with a really cool name for it. We will take suggestions in the comments for what name you want Kerry's Corner, Kerry's, what were some of the names we came up with, the team?
There were quite a few.
Yeah.
Carol has Carol's Corner, and we were going to come up with a name for
Baker, something.
Yeah.
Baker. Baker's. Help us out, folks. Help us out.
Yeah, we don't have large imaginations, so give us. I don't, and you guys can choose the topics and name and all that. I have a few in mind, but all right. Wanted to Mr. T.A. Chapman, or maybe Miss T.A. Chapman. I have an appointment on the 1st with a veterans law judge for sleep apnea and PTSD. That sounds like you have a hearing. I hold a diagnosis for sleep apnea. So I always have this thing that pops up at the end of my sentence. I hold a diagnosis for sleep apnea and issued sleep app, I think you mean CPAP, and chronic sleep problems before and after service. Rated 0% not service connected. I have had multiple trips over the last several years for anxiety, suicidal ideation, directly related to my PTSD. What might I need to go from 70 to 100? Yeah, see, without seeing it, that's hard for us to answer, without seeing actual examinations and, history in the record. And I'm focusing just on a PTSD rating right now. If you want to look up the rating criteria, it's in Title 38, the Code of Federal Regulations in Part 4. And you just look up the mental health rating criteria. It's going to give you the 100% rating criteria. But those, at the same time, those are just examples. There's tons more that somebody, as far as symptoms go, that somebody could have that may not be listed in that criteria. At the end of the day, they want to see, as far as mental health goes, sort of at the 10,000 foot level, they want to see total occupational and social impairment. That's the wording that they put on the forms, and that's the wording that's in the rating criteria. Then it can be due to whatever symptoms that you describe. So at the end of the day, one symptom, if it's bad enough, could produce total occupational and social impairment. Or it could be multiple symptoms that produce that. But at the end of the day, for 100% rating, that's what they're looking for. Now, I know you had some other parts of your question there. Go back to the first part, Nate. Yeah, for your sleep apnea, that's, I mean, you're trying to get service connected for that. That's not a whole lot I could say. If you had it before and after service, have they ruled it existing prior to service, or did you just have sleep problems prior to service? Because if you definitely had it prior to service, the answer is different than if you only had it after service or if you had it during service. Because the one, you'd have to get over the presumption of soundness. Another one, you might not have to get over that presumption. In another scenario, it could be related to the PTSD, which there are some links there from sleep apnea to PTSD. But without knowing the facts, it's kind of hard to answer. What you need to tell the judge. It's not something that we could tell you. Ursula might have a better answer on that.
Yeah, I don't know where that 70% is coming from. If you're already 70% for PTSD and you're just trying to get to 100% overall, even if you were to service connect the sleep apnea.
Oh, we lost me.
Even if you were trying to service connect the sleep apnea, and you're 70% for PTSD, that's not going to get you to 100. That's going to get you to about 90%. So, without knowing more, there's just really not much I can do about that or answer about that. But good luck. Good luck. All right, last question. George. Okay. 100% permanent and total, SMCS, sleep apnea, waiting, appeal at board. I have plenty more appeals, direct and secondary claims. I could make, should I? How to strongly link back claims from 40 years ago as physically strenuous field to loads of back problems starting 25 years. Go back to the beginning. So you're already 100% with SMCS. Unless you need aid and attendance, you're not going to see any benefit in any of those appeals that you're filing. You've got the SMCS, even with the sleep apnea waiting, that's not going to give you additional compensation now. You're only going to get some kind of additional compensation if you, like I said, go for aid and attendance, and then some of these other secondary things might help, or if you need to service connect them because you need aid and attendance for those. I, at this point, without knowing what your situation is, just if someone came to me and were like, hey, you know, I would say, no, don't do it. If you're not going to get any additional benefit out of it, don't open up your file. There's no reason for it. When you do need aid and attendance, maybe then you start looking at it because there's another benefit that you might need, and you need those things service connected. But I don't see the benefit in doing it. There's nothing else for you to gain by getting multiple low ratings if you don't need aid and attendance. Kerry?
I'm kind of with you. You guys might can guess my answer to some of that. You know, at the end of the day, if you've got an SMCS rating, you know, you're getting 4,500, depending on your dependency, dollars a month. If you can feed yourself, if you can bathe yourself, if you can get up and walk on your own, if you got the use of both your hands, you know, if you can be left alone without killing yourself, you know, I don't mean that in a flippant way, but if you can go out and do those things, then stop filing claims, go enjoy your life, take care of yourself. You know, if you can't walk on your own, you need help bathing or dressing, feeding yourself, or somebody needs to be with you all the time, then that may change that answer. And it may direct what you need to do with your claim. You know, are those things going to get you there? And are any of them going to put what you've got in jeopardy? You know, one thing in our practice that I don't like to see are vets pushing the envelope, and we end up having to fight off a reduction when we were trying to get an increased rating because somebody was pushing that envelope too far. If you're already 100%, you don't want to try to fight off a reduction. That's more stress than most of us need. So just, you know, take that with a grain of salt for what it's worth. That's all I got.
All right, so that's it for today. If you have additional questions, definitely check out our YouTube channel. We've got all kinds of stuff on there to answer other questions, other attorneys, everything. So I think we've got a video on just about anything out there. Also, don't forget to put in your comments what we should call Mr. Baker's Corner. That we're gonna.
They're already coming.
Baker's Breakdown. Oh, I like that. Baker. Okay, keep them coming. We're certainly going to look at it as a team. We will take it to our team next Tuesday and have them vote on it. So Baker's doesn't. So it'll all come down to them. Baker's non-VA ingredients. Nice. And we'll have our team vote on it. So you guys are good. See, we knew you could vote with it. All right. So we'll see. You may not see us next week, but you will see someone from the firm, and stay safe. And we'll see you next week.